Hi there, I'm Marla. My sister planned a $75,000 lakefront engagement and made sure I'd be invisible in it, literally. No name, no cake credit, not even in the family slideshow. But I stayed quiet until I played the recording, right in front of everyone. Have you ever felt like your family was rewriting you out of your own story? What time are you watching this and where are you tuning in from? Drop it in the comments, I'd love to hear. I pulled into Charleston just after sunrise. The city was quiet, cloaked in a gray stillness that pressed low against the ground like a held breath. My windshield wipers squeaked once before I shut off the engine. The passenger seat held a gift box, perfectly tied, untouched by the chaos behind it. 8 hours on the road, and somehow, I still wasn't sure why I came. The house loomed at the top of the driveway like a memory I hadn't asked to relive. It used to smell like rosemary and orange zest in December. Now it just looked staged, like a catalog someone else curated for a life I no longer belonged to. I stayed in the car longer than I should have. My phone buzzed. A group chat notification popped up. Family Core. I hadn't seen that name in years. My heart gave a small jolt as I opened it. I expected casual messages, maybe a happy holidays, but what I saw carved right through my ribs. We'll just say it's a numbers thing, my mother had typed. Not enough seats. Then Delaney chimed in. She'll make it about herself anyway. Another message, one I didn't remember reading earlier, appeared farther up. Let her show up, but we'll steer her out of the center. Quietly. I didn't breathe. My thumb hovered, my mind racing to stitch together a defense I didn't even believe. I took a screenshot, my hands trembling. I scrolled again. The thread blinked. The top message vanished. Gone. It had been edited or deleted. They didn't want me to see it. Someone was scrubbing the tracks. It wasn't a miscommunication. It was precision, quiet sabotage. The air in the car turned thick. I stared at the house, suddenly foreign in its angles and light. The cold seeped in through the floor mats, up my spine. This wasn't about misunderstanding or distance. This was a decision they made without me. I opened the door and stepped out. My boots sank slightly into damp gravel. I pulled my coat tighter, but it didn't help. The wind wasn't what chilled me. Inside the foyer, everything looked as perfect as it always did. Grand, expensive, polished. But the chandeliers felt colder now, like icicles trapped mid-fall. I passed by a mirror, caught a glimpse of myself, hair damp from mist, makeup half worn off. I didn't recognize the woman looking back. They talk about me when I'm not there, but I'm here now. And the silence still has a shape. Each step echoed louder than it should have. Past the framed portraits, the heirloom clock, the carefully positioned poinsettias, like the house had been dressed for a magazine, not for a daughter returning. I reached the edge of the main room. Voices hushed just before I stepped inside. Delaney and my mother stood together, wine glasses already in hand, their eyes locking for just a second too long. That look, they weren't surprised to see me. They were calculating. I didn't say a word. Neither did they. Inside my head, something snapped clean. They knew I was coming. They just hoped I wouldn't. I spent days on the cake. White velvet layers, lemon curd filling, Delaney's favorite when we were kids. I piped sugar orchids by hand, each one molded from memory, each petal a peace offering. It wasn't just dessert. It was my attempt at a bridge. I wanted it to say, without words, I still believe we're sisters. The catering entrance was chaos. Staff in black uniforms scurried past, calling out timelines and checking clipboards. I gave my name, twice. They blinked at me like I was speaking another language. There's nothing here under you, one of them said, not even looking up. I walked around the corner, heartbeat hitching. The utility corridor smelled of stale bleach and forgotten things. Then I saw it, on a metal cart by the service door, the box I packed so carefully. No label, half-thawed. A flower had fallen off and stuck to the side like a bruised apology. Why is this back here? I asked a junior planner, pointing. She shrugged. No delivery tag. No one knew who brought it. I wanted to scream, but my throat burned too tight. You didn't think to ask? She blinked, bored. We just went with the labeled ones, sorry. I picked up the box, palms damp with cold condensation. My name meant nothing here. That night, during the toast, I tried to tell myself it didn't matter. The cake was on display now, replated, lit under soft gold fixtures like some magazine feature. It was there. That should have been enough. Until Linnell raised her glass. To the woman who made today even sweeter, Delaney's best friend since college, our angel of elegance, thank you for the stunning cake. People clapped. My mother nodded, proud. Delaney smiled with perfect modesty, and I, mid-sip, froze. The wine stayed suspended at my lips, untouched. My name was never spoken. My gift became someone else's applause. I wasn't just forgotten. I was overwritten. Linnell kissed Delaney's cheek. The crowd turned toward the cake as if it had always belonged to her hands. I excused myself before I could choke. The terrace was empty. The wind stung. I leaned against the stone railing and stared at the water beyond the trees, glassy and indifferent. I had told myself silence was grace, that backing down meant strength. But grace doesn't feel like being stepped on. How many times can you vanish before there's nothing left? I thought of that box on the service cart, how no one missed it, how no one missed me. This wasn't an accident. It wasn't just someone forgetting to mention my name. It was a pattern. A quiet erasure they hoped I wouldn't notice, because noticing would make me difficult, because remembering would make me inconvenient. I texted Elise back in Atlanta. They erased me. Again. Her reply came fast. Maybe it's time you stop letting them. The pavilion shimmered in soft amber light, casting golden reflections over the water. Guests settled into their chairs, their wine glasses clinking gently as the screen flickered to life. The first photo of Delaney as a baby appeared, cheeks round, arms outstretched, and the room melted into laughter. She sat 2 rows ahead, wiping a tear with the back of her manicured hand. People leaned in, murmuring how beautiful the montage was. Nostalgia hung thick in the air like perfume. I braced myself, waiting for the image I knew had to come. The 2 of us in our backyard, sticky with popsicles, matching scrapes on our knees. Or the Christmas when we wore identical green velvet dresses and argued over who got to hold the puppy. I waited and waited. Birthday parties, dance recitals, their trip to Disney, our beach vacation, but only Delaney and Linnell on the sand, where I remembered clearly building that castle. The space where I should have been was either cropped, zoomed, or replaced entirely. I didn't breathe. My stomach curled inward like old paper. Each slide was a carefully curated wound. After the applause, I found Delaney near the bar. Her champagne glass sparkled like she hadn't felt a single sharp edge. You picked the slideshow? I asked quietly. She shrugged. The planner handled it. Maybe the editor didn't find any good ones with you. I stared. There were plenty. She sipped her drink. You always took blurry ones. I walked away before I said something I'd regret, but regret was already dripping down my spine. That night, after most guests had migrated to the dance floor, I slipped into the tech corner. The event laptop was unattended. I opened the slideshow folder. There they were, the originals. Me, arms wrapped around Delaney at her 9th birthday. Me, holding our dog during the first day of school. Me, always beside her. In the final edits, I was surgically cut. Faces shifted, backgrounds cropped, memories distorted like I never mattered. One photo hit hardest. The 3 of us at the beach, me, Delaney, and Linnell, our legs buried in the sand, sunburned and shrieking with laughter. In the slideshow, it was just Delaney and Linnell, perfectly centered. My half of the towel? Gone. 16 years ago, at Dad's funeral, I stood between Delaney and Mom. I remember thinking, just for that 1 hour, I belonged. I stepped out into the corridor where framed prints lined the tables. Even the photos displayed there, posed, pristine, proud, excluded me. I ran a finger along the edge of one, a photo I remembered us all taking on Thanksgiving, but only 2 chairs were filled. This wasn't careless. This wasn't someone forgetting a name. It was deliberate, rehearsed, rewritten. I whispered to myself, low and steady, this isn't neglect. This is a rewrite. Pulling out my phone, I opened the camera and began recording. One frame at a time, silent, patient, unwavering. Let them erase me. I'd keep the proof. I didn't expect him to speak to me, let alone pull me aside like it was some secret mission. Grant had that polite stiffness most grooms wore at events like these, a bit overwhelmed, a bit detached. But as I stood near the empty fire pit outside the hall, staring at my phone screen still showing cropped photos, I heard his voice behind me. "Hey, can I talk to you for a second?" I turned. His tie was loosened, jaw clenched like he'd swallowed something bitter. I nodded. He hesitated, looking around before saying, "There's something I've been meaning to ask, and I guess now's the only time." My chest tightened. He rubbed the back of his neck. "Earlier today, before the toast, I overheard Linnell say something about you. Something rehearsed, like it was from a playbook. She said, well, you know how Marla always finds a way to ruin things. She doesn't mean to, bless her heart, but she does." He mimicked the exact inflection. I didn't speak. She wasn't even trying to be subtle. It felt coordinated. I finally said, "That's how they've always talked about me. It's not new." He looked at me then, not with pity, but something harder. "That's the thing. It's not just today. I've been noticing it. The way your name comes up, it's like they all read from the same script, same phrases, same tone." I studied him carefully. "And?" Grant pulled his phone from his pocket, opened an old email, and held it out to me. "This was sent to me 4 months ago, from Delaney's mom." I read. The subject line, "A little context on Marla." The body was worse than I imagined, an elegant arrangement of character assassination. "She has a history of making scenes. We love her, of course, but sometimes she confuses attention with love. We'd hate for anything to disrupt Delaney's day." I gave the phone back. My hands were cold. "She warned me not to invite you," Grant said. "Said it was for the greater good. I didn't know what to make of it then. Now I think I do." The air between us crackled with something fragile. "For years," I said quietly, "I thought I was overreacting, that I needed thicker skin. But it wasn't in my head. They've been working at this, carefully, methodically, long before today." Grant nodded, then asked, "Why? What did you do to them?" "I existed," I said. Silence fell. I glanced back toward the hall. Through the window, Delaney threw her head back in laughter. Linnell stood next to her, hand on her arm. Perfect. Posed. "You were right to question it," I said. "But you don't know how deep this goes." He looked shaken. "Are you going to tell anyone?" I met his eyes. "When I speak, it won't be something they can delete." He didn't respond. He just nodded once and stepped away. For the first time in years, I wasn't the only one who saw it. The lakefront garden still smelled faintly of damp leaves and overripe azaleas. I found Clara standing by the wrought iron bench, arms folded against the breeze, the same way she used to stand outside church when we were kids, like she was trying to appear smaller than she really was. She looked up and offered a soft smile. "You found me." "I always do," I said, forcing warmth into my voice. We sat in silence for a while. The moon hung low over the water, catching the tops of the reeds. I looked at her, really looked. The lines around her eyes had deepened, but her gaze, it was guarded. "Clara," I said gently, "do you think I deserve this?" She blinked. "Deserve what?" "All of it. The looks, the omissions, the way they talk about me like I'm an obligation." She sighed, a long, tired breath. "Marla, this weekend isn't about you. It's about Delaney. It's best not to stir things up." My stomach dropped. "So you knew? About the photos, the cake, everything." She looked away. "I just didn't want more tension. Things are already sensitive." I felt the shift like a crack down my spine. The woman who once defended me during Thanksgiving dinner, when I was 12 and Delaney had dumped an entire pie and blamed me, was now shrinking into neutrality. Back then, Clara had stood up in front of everyone and said, "Enough. She's a child, not your scapegoat." Her voice had shaken, but she hadn't wavered. Now, she couldn't even meet my eyes. "You used to stand up for me." That was a long time ago. But I never stopped needing it. Her expression tightened. "You have no idea what it costs to be in the middle." I stood up. "You're not in the middle. You chose a side the moment you said nothing." She didn't respond. The silence stretched between us, taut and cold. I didn't cry. Not anymore. "Thank you," I said, voice even, "for helping me stop waiting." I walked away before she could answer. My feet moved faster than my thoughts. The wet grass clung to my heels like the remnants of something I should have outgrown years ago. I passed under the paper lanterns back toward the event tent, a dull buzz of chatter and music behind the fabric walls. That was when I saw it. A young guest leaned over a laptop, adjusting the scrolling slideshow. On screen flashed a photo: Delaney, Linnell, and Clara. Smiling, radiant. The label under the image read, "Marla Delaney Linnell, 1998. My breath stopped. I stepped closer. That wasn't me in the photo. It was Clara. Clara, photoshopped or mistaken or willing, now wore my name like a borrowed dress. Even my identity wasn't sacred. They didn't just erase me, they replaced me. My jaw clenched. Enough. The air inside the brunch tent was thick with syrupy laughter and the scent of overripe fruit trays. I walked in straight-backed, the tension in my shoulders taut but controlled. My coat was draped over my arm like armor, and in my right hand was the phone I hadn't let out of my sight in days. Delaney stood under a burst of peach roses, glowing like a curated fairy tale. Our mother, just to her left, beamed with pride so polished it could blind. Clara caught my eye from across the room. She looked away. I didn't. I found my seat near the middle table, where place cards still spelled my name correctly. An oversight, maybe. My hands didn't shake when I set the phone down. One tap, screen lit. The file blinked open. The host lifted his champagne flute. To love, to family, to forever. I stood. To love, I said, and to truth. A few heads turned. Delaney's smile twitched. My mother's brow lifted half an inch. I tapped play. At first, there was laughter, tinny, distorted. Then voices. Delaney's. If she froze in that snowstorm, it'd have been poetic, honestly. Linnell giggled. At least the engagement photos wouldn't need editing. Gasps rippled across the tent like a crack in glass. Silverware halted mid-air. A waiter froze, holding a plate of salmon. Delaney's eyes widened. She opened her mouth, too late. My hand rose slightly. She stopped. The final 30 seconds. My mother's voice, unmistakable. Marla always finds a way to ruin things. This is Delaney's moment, not hers. Silence. Then, chaos and stillness. Everyone breathing, but no one speaking. My mother broke first. "That's not me. That could be anyone." I didn't raise my voice. "It's you. And I've had it saved for weeks." No one moved. No one defended her. No one defended me either. But I didn't need them to. For the first time, I wasn't imagining it. They had heard it. All of it. I looked around the room, their flushed faces, their averted eyes, the tremble in Delaney's hands. This wasn't revenge. It was exposure. I didn't want apologies. I wanted them to hear themselves the way I always had, unfiltered, irredeemable. I left the phone on the table and turned. No one followed. Outside, the lake wind slapped hard across my cheek. I didn't flinch. The sky had turned the color of cold steel. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text. Grant. I just left the brunch. I stared at the screen, then tucked it away. Good. After the brunch, the lakefront estate buzzed with two kinds of silence. The kind that simmers and the kind that seethes. Some relatives avoided eye contact. Others offered clipped nods, pretending nothing had happened. A few whispered words like tactless and unstable, loud enough for me to hear. Delaney and my mother were gone before dessert was cleared. I didn't chase them. I went back to the cottage alone. The the echo of forks frozen midair still sharp in my ears. An hour later, my phone vibrated. Once, then again. A cease and desist. Delaney was threatening legal action for defamation and emotional damage. It didn't even shock me. Of course, she'd twist exposure into persecution. I stared at the email, lips curled, heart burning, not from fear, but from the sheer audacity. Then the story broke, not in a courtroom, but on a local bridal blog. Delaney gave an exclusive interview, claiming I was mentally fragile, fixated on her happiness, and had a history of delusional behavior. They titled it, "When Family Becomes the Problem, A Bride's Warning." Public opinion fractured like glass under pressure. Some comments called me unhinged, others questioned Delaney's narrative. But the nickname stuck. The sister who ruins weddings. I didn't leave the cottage for days. I sat on the edge of the same porch we used to play on as kids, laptop open to the video library our dad once kept. There we were, years ago, squealing over popsicles, sunburned and sticky with laughter. Delaney shoved me gently into the grass, and we collapsed, tangled in childhood joy. I watched that moment on loop. "She wasn't always like this," I whispered. Or maybe she never saw me as enough. The text came from a number I didn't recognize. Check the blog. My heart barely moved. I clicked anyway. The bridal blog had posted a follow-up. "You heard half the story, here's the rest." The full recording, unedited, every second of it, including the part where Delaney and Linnell planned the accidental misplacement of my cake, including our mother's laughter. Linnell had leaked it. A source confirmed she did it to distance herself from misrepresentation and emotional fallout. She hadn't grown a conscience. She'd grown afraid. The tide shifted fast. The comments flipped. Apologies poured in. Private messages from strangers. People sharing their own stories of being scapegoated, erased, shamed for existing too loudly in families that demanded silence. I didn't reply to most, but I read every single one. That night, just before midnight, my phone buzzed again. "Delaney, you think this is over?" I stared at her words until the screen dimmed. Then, I looked at my own reflection in the kitchen window, drawn but unshaken. "No," I said to myself, "it hasn't even begun." The headline hit like a slap. "The Sister Who Ruined Love." I blinked at my phone, fingers tightening around the ceramic mug until I thought it might crack. My name wasn't on the byline, but everything in the article was about me. Anonymously sourced, emotionally weaponized, and saturated with venom. There I was, in pixelated shame, a cropped photo of me from the brunch, mid-tier, chin low, eyes puffy. The caption read, "Disruptive, unstable, and uninvited." They called me attention-hungry, a shadow obsessed with destroying Delaney's light. They painted a portrait of desperation, spun from pieces I hadn't chosen to share. It worked. Within hours, my inbox flooded with pitying advice, condolences laced with judgment. Maybe don't attend family events if they upset you so much. Weddings bring out the worst. You should focus on healing. No one asked what really happened. No one wanted the messier truth. I shut the blinds. I paced. I curled up on the floor, knees pulled in like I was bracing for an impact already dealt. My breath shook as it came. In that moment, I was 8 again, watching Delaney blow out candles at a party I didn't have. Me, always behind the camera. Me, holding coats, cutting cake, staying out of the way. Not anymore. I opened my laptop and clicked through the chaos. My folder, my proof. I had screenshots of the group chat. I had audio files, video clips, bakery receipts, my own diary scans from when I still thought love meant silence. I gathered it all. I didn't send it to the blogs. I sent it to someone who wrote truth like a weapon. Her name was Rachel Pike, an investigative writer who once exposed corruption in a national bridal expo. I emailed her with the subject line, "When you're the punchline in your own family." She responded in 20 minutes. 3 days later, Charleston Now dropped a series titled, "Erased: When Families Rewrite You." There were no filters, no anonymous quotes, just facts, receipts, audio, comparisons between altered and original photos, commentary from family psychologists, interviews with other women who had been systematically excluded from family milestones. It exploded. People weren't just curious, they were furious. The comments flooded in by the hundreds. This happened to me. I thought I was crazy. Thank you for saying it out loud. Delaney's wedding sponsors backed out quietly. Grant released a statement that he was reassessing the engagement. The venue pulled their promotional images. My mother vanished from Facebook, but I didn't feel victorious, just settled. I walked along the lake where this whole charade began, where they staged a dream and erased me from it. The water looked the same, but I wasn't. Then came the message. It wasn't signed. You may have spoken, but you'll never belong. I read it twice. I didn't delete it. I looked up at my reflection in the window, outlined in early dusk. I didn't flinch. I'm done belonging to people who only want me gone, I said softly. I belong to the truth now. Charleston wasn't quiet, just quieter than it had been. The air no longer buzzed with whispers about the sister. It pulsed with a strange, measured stillness. After the series went viral, the city turned cautious. The wedding was officially canceled, with no new date set. Grant had stepped away, publicly and personally. Delaney's page went private. My inbox, once a battlefield, was now filled with silence and scattered gratitude from strangers who recognized themselves in me. I walked past the lake again, the same lake where the champagne cork popped, where the photographer directed everyone but me, where I stood alone with a cake no one claimed. The surface shimmered under winter sunlight. It looked clean, deceptively peaceful. There was no apology from my mother, just a message. Let's not escalate this further. A command dressed as a plea. Clara Jo sent flowers with no card, hydrangeas. I remembered her saying once they were Delaney's favorite. Fitting. Delaney didn't speak to me. She didn't have to. Her story, "Some people destroy what they envy," remained on her Instagram, accompanied by a filtered photo of her looking wistfully over the marina. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I was done narrating my worth to people who had already written their version of me. But something unexpected happened. A journalist from the Times invited me to contribute a column, "Family Gaslighting at Celebrations." At first, I almost said no, but something settled in my chest when I reread the email. Not victory, not vengeance, just air, like I could finally breathe on paper. I wrote about patterns, not people, about omission, soft cruelty, and the silence that suffocates more than screams. It wasn't about Delaney. It wasn't even about me anymore. My old students from the high school art program found me again. One sent a hand-drawn card that read, "Ms. Carter taught us color never disappears. It just gets buried." Charleston didn't feel like exile now, but it no longer felt like home either. I packed in stillness, no rush, no bitterness. I folded the printout of the family group chat. I placed it beside the flash drive of the recordings, a few scribbled diary pages, and my audio recorder. Then I labeled the box, Truth. There wasn't much else worth taking. The apartment was quiet, too quiet to echo. I stood in the doorway with one final glance, the couch where I cried, the window where I waited, all behind me. The train ticket in my coat pocket read, Seattle, not to run, to begin. Some truths aren't meant to be whispered behind cupped hands. Some wounds aren't meant to be coddled. They're meant to be named. And while mine won't vanish, they no longer control the rhythm of my steps. I didn't leave Charleston in flames. I left it in full view. Before I locked the door one last time, I turned back, not to say goodbye, but to be sure it's truly behind me. Sometimes the people who should protect us are the very ones who rewrite us. I spent years shrinking myself, trying to fit into a version of family that never truly saw me. But the moment I stopped begging for a seat at their table and built my own, I began to heal. If you've ever felt erased, overlooked, or gaslit into silence, let this be your reminder. Your truth matters. Speak it. Own it, even if your voice shakes. Now I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to reclaim your voice? Or walk away from a version of love that no longer served you? Drop a comment below. Type 1 if this story touched you, or let me know where you're watching from. And if you didn't resonate with this story, tell me why. I genuinely want to know. If this video moved you in any way, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next story that might just mirror your own.